Merrick Cole measured coffee grounds with the same precision he once used to calculate forest fire burn rates. 3 level tablespoons. No more, no less. The kitchen timer would chime in exactly 4 minutes, and he would pour the first cup into Lenora's blue ceramic mug, the one with the chipped handle she refused to replace. Coffee's almost ready. He called toward the living room where his wife sat in her wheelchair, morning news playing on the television. "Make sure it's not too hot this time," Lenora replied without turning around. "You know how sensitive my mouth is since the accident." The accident. 4 years, 3 months, and 16 days since Lenora claimed she slipped on ice outside the grocery store. 4 years, 3 months, and 16 days since Merrick left his job as a forest ranger to become her full-time caretaker. He poured the coffee, tested the temperature with his pinky, and carried it to her. The ritual never changed. She would take a sip, nod once, and he would position the mug within easy reach on the side table. "Any plans today?" she asked, eyes fixed on the weather report. "Thought I'd wash your car. Oil change is due next week. Don't forget to clean the inside. It smells like that awful pine air freshener you bought." Merrick nodded and returned to the kitchen. Through the window above the sink, he could see their nearest neighbor, Joni Price, tending to her garden 200 yards away. The retired librarian had been their only regular visitor since Lenora's accident. She brought casseroles twice a week and stayed for tea, chatting about nothing important while Merrick listened from the kitchen. The cabin sat on 40 acres of land his father had left him: pine trees, rocky soil, and enough space to disappear if a man wanted to. Sometimes Merrick stood on the back porch and remembered what it felt like to walk alone through the wilderness, making decisions that mattered, solving problems that had clear solutions. He prepared Lenora's breakfast: scrambled eggs, wheat toast, orange juice in a glass with a straw. She had specific requirements about the eggs: soft but not runny, salted but not peppered, served warm but not steaming. "Your sister called yesterday," Lenora said when he set the plate on her lap table. Merrick paused. "Rachel, she wanted to know if we needed anything. I told her we were fine." They hadn't spoken to Rachel in 3 years. Not since their parents died and the family fought over the estate. Rachel thought Merrick had taken more than his share. Merrick thought Rachel had abandoned their parents when they needed help the most. What did she really want, he asked. Maybe she feels guilty. People do that when they realize they've been selfish. Lenora took a bite of eggs and made a face. "These are cold." Merrick took the plate back to the kitchen, reheated the eggs in the microwave, and returned them. She tested another bite and nodded approval. After breakfast, he helped her transfer from wheelchair to the couch. The process involved careful positioning of her legs, support under her arms, and a slow pivot that she claimed caused pain in her lower back. She winced during the movement, and Merrick adjusted pillows behind her. "I need to call the insurance company about my physical therapy," she said. "The copays are getting ridiculous." "I can handle that." "No, I'll do it. You never ask the right questions." Merrick left her with the phone and went outside to work on the car. The Honda sat in their gravel driveway, covered with a week's worth of dust and pollen. He filled a bucket with soapy water and began washing the hood. The work felt good. Simple. Water, soap, rinse, dry. Results you could see immediately. Not like caring for someone who never seemed to improve, never seemed grateful, never seemed to remember that he'd given up everything to stay home with her. He was scrubbing the windshield when Joni appeared at the edge of their property, walking her small terrier. "Morning, Merrick," she called. "Morning, Joni." She approached the driveway, holding the dog's leash as it sniffed around the car tires. "How's Lenora feeling today?" "Same as always." "Such a shame. A woman her age should be out living life, not stuck in that wheelchair." Joni shook her head. "Though I suppose she's lucky to have you. Not every man would sacrifice his career to care for his wife. Any man would do the same." "Oh, I don't know about that. My first husband couldn't even bring me soup when I had the flu." Joni's dog finished investigating the car and pulled toward the house. "Well, I better get going. Tell Lenora I'll bring some of that soup she likes on Thursday." "I'll tell her." Merrick watched Joni walk away, then returned to washing the car. The conversation bothered him, though he couldn't say why. Maybe because Joni treated him like some kind of saint for doing what any decent husband would do. Maybe because he wasn't sure he was decent anymore, He was rinsing the soap from the rear bumper when he heard Lenora's voice through the open living room window. I can't keep pretending forever, babe. He's buying every word. Merrick stopped moving. The hose continued running in his hand, water pooling around his boots. I'll get the house signed over by next month. We'll have everything. Merrick set down the hose and walked to the window. Lenora sat on the couch with her back to him, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was different, lighter, younger, almost playful. You worry too much, she was saying. He's completely devoted. Follows me around like a lost dog. The water from the hose had reached the edge of the driveway and was running into the grass. Merrick turned it off and stood listening. Of course, he doesn't suspect anything. The man gave up his whole career to take care of poor, helpless me. She laughed. God, sometimes I almost feel sorry for him. Merrick walked back to the car, moving slowly, processing what he'd heard. Lenora was talking to someone else. Someone she called babe. Someone who was helping her get the house. He picked up her phone from where he'd left it on the car hood. The screen was wet from the rinse water. He wiped it with his shirt and noticed the voicemail notification. Without thinking, he touched the screen. The voicemail played through the external speaker. Hey babe, it's me. I can't keep pretending forever. He's buying every word. I'll get the house signed over by next month. We'll have everything. Merrick listened to the message again. Then a third time. Lenora's voice, but not the Lenora he knew. This voice belonged to someone scheming, someone planning, someone who called another man babe and talked about getting everything. He saved the voicemail to his own phone, then deleted it from hers. The screen showed several missed calls from a number he didn't recognize, all from this morning while he was outside. His hands weren't shaking. That surprised him. He'd expected to feel rage or hurt or betrayal. Instead, he felt something colder, something calculating. Through the window, Lenora was still on the phone. Next week is perfect. He'll be at his doctor's appointment Tuesday morning. We can finalize everything then. Merrick finished drying the car and went inside. Lenora was back in her wheelchair, phone on her lap, watching television as if nothing had happened. Car looks good, she said without looking at him. Thanks. Did I get any calls while you were outside? Not that I heard. She nodded and turned back to the TV. A cooking show was explaining how to make beef stew. Lenora watched with the same blank expression she wore during the news, during game shows, during the soap operas she claimed helped pass the time. That evening, Merrick cooked dinner as always. Grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, rice. He set her plate on the lap table and sat across from her with his own meal. How was your day? He asked. Boring. The usual. Any interesting calls? Insurance company about the physical therapy. Nothing important. Merrick cut his chicken into precise squares. Maybe we should think about getting you out more. Joni mentioned there's a support group at the community center for people with disabilities. Lenora's fork paused halfway to her mouth. I don't need a support group. I have everything I need right here. Still, it might be good to meet people who understand what you're going through. I said no, Merrick. I'm not interested in sitting around complaining with a bunch of strangers. After dinner, Merrick cleaned the dishes while Lenora watched a movie. He dried each plate carefully, thinking about the voicemail, about the phone calls, about the conversation he'd overheard. Someone was helping his wife take everything from him. Someone who thought Merrick was buying every word. Someone who believed he was completely devoted, following her around like a lost dog. They weren't wrong about the devoted part. For 4 years, he'd restructured his entire life around Lenora's needs. He'd learned to cook her favorite meals, to help her transfer from bed to wheelchair to couch. He'd given up hiking, camping, the work he loved, the friends he'd made as a ranger. But they were wrong about everything else. Merrick Cole had spent 15 years reading forest fires, predicting their paths, calculating their destruction. He understood systems, patterns, cause, and effect. And he was about to put those skills to use. Merrick drove to the electronics store in Bozeman the next morning, telling Lenora he needed supplies for a minor repair around the house. The young clerk showed him several options for wireless security cameras, small, motion-activated, with cloud storage and smartphone access. These are great for keeping an eye on things when you're away, the clerk explained. Battery life is about 6 months, and they record in high definition. What about sound quality? Crystal clear. You can hear conversations from 20 feet away. Merrick bought 4 cameras and drove home. Lenora was in her usual spot on the couch, watching morning television. He went to his workshop in the basement and studied the camera manual, learning about placement, angles, and wireless connectivity. The first camera went in the living room, tucked behind a book on the shelf where it had a clear view of the couch and coffee table. The second went in the kitchen, mounted inside a decorative jar on top of the refrigerator. The third camera he positioned in the hallway, where it could monitor both the guest bedroom and the main bathroom. The fourth camera he saved for later. That afternoon, while Lenora napped, Merrick tested the system. The cameras connected to his phone immediately, showing clear video and audio from each location. He watched Lenora sleep on the couch. Her face relaxed in a way he rarely saw when she was awake. When she woke up, he was reading in his chair, phone tucked away. "I think I'll take a bath," she said. "Need help? I can manage." Merrick helped her transfer to the wheelchair and watched her roll toward the bathroom. On his phone screen, he could see her enter the hallway, pause at the guest bedroom door, then continue to the bathroom. 20 minutes later, she called for help getting back to her wheelchair. The routine was familiar. He'd assisted with dozens of baths over the past 4 years. Always respectful, always careful to preserve her dignity. "Feel better?" he asked as they returned to the living room. "Much. I was thinking maybe we could have Joni over for dinner this week. It's been a while since we had company." "Sure. When?" "Friday night. I'll call her tomorrow." That evening, after Lenora went to bed, Merrick sat in the kitchen reviewing the day's camera footage on his laptop. Most of it showed exactly what he expected: Lenora watching television, reading magazines, napping. But at 2:47 p.m., while he was outside splitting firewood, something different happened on the screen. Lenora transferred from the couch to her wheelchair. Nothing unusual about that. But instead of rolling toward the kitchen or bathroom, she went to the guest bedroom. The hallway camera caught her opening the door and disappearing inside. Merrick fast-forwarded through the footage. Lenora remained in the guest bedroom for 38 minutes. When she emerged, she was carrying her phone and a manila folder he didn't recognize. That he rewound the footage and studied it again. Lenora moved from couch to wheelchair with the same careful, pained expression she always wore. But in the guest bedroom, away from his view, she was doing something that required privacy. The next morning brought rain. Merrick made coffee and breakfast while monitoring Lenora through the kitchen camera. She seemed restless, checking her phone frequently and glancing toward the window. "I need to make some calls today," she said after breakfast. "Doctor appointments and insurance stuff. Might take a while. I'll be in the workshop if you need anything." Merrick went to the basement but kept his phone close, watching the live camera feeds. At 10:30 a.m., Lenora made her first call. The audio was clear enough to hear her end of the conversation. "It's me. Is this line secure?" A pause. "Good. We need to move faster. He's getting suspicious." Merrick turned up the volume. "I don't know, just little things. Yesterday, he asked about support groups, wanted me to get out more. That's not like him." Another pause. "No, we stick to the plan. Tuesday morning when he's at the doctor. Bring everything we discussed." The call ended. Merrick saved the audio file to his cloud storage and continued watching. At 11:15, Lenora made another call. "Dr. Peterson's office? This is Lenora Cole. I need to reschedule my husband's appointment for Tuesday. Yes, I know it's short notice, but something came up. Thursday afternoon would be perfect." Merrick felt his jaw tighten. Lenora was changing his doctor's appointment without telling him, creating an opening on Tuesday morning when she thought he'd be gone. The third call came at noon. "Hi, it's Lenora." "No, he doesn't suspect anything. Because I've been doing this for 4 years, that's why. Look, just bring the papers Tuesday and let me worry about my husband." After lunch, Lenora announced she was tired and needed a nap. Merrick helped her to the couch and waited until she was asleep before leaving the house. He drove to town and parked outside the medical office where Dr. Peterson worked. The receptionist confirmed that his appointment had been moved from Tuesday to Thursday. "Your wife called yesterday. She said you had a family emergency, right?" Family emergency. Merrick drove to the library next. He needed to research property law, specifically the regulations around transferring ownership of inherited land. The answers weren't encouraging. With the right paperwork and circumstances, it was possible for a spouse to gain control of inherited property, especially if the owner could be declared mentally incompetent or if there was evidence of financial abuse. That evening, Lenora was unusually talkative during dinner. "I was thinking we should update our wills," she said. "Make sure everything's in order." "What brought that on?" "My friend Janet's husband died last month. She's having all kinds of legal problems because their paperwork wasn't current." "What kind of problems?" "Oh, bank accounts, property ownership. The usual mess when someone dies without proper planning." Merrick nodded and continued eating. "We could call Tom Harrison. He handled the estate when my parents died. Actually, I already contacted someone, a lawyer in Missoula who specializes in disability cases. He understands our situation better." "Our situation?" With my condition and everything. There are special considerations for disabled people." After dinner, Merrick loaded the dishwasher and watched Lenora through the living room camera. She was on her phone again, typing text messages. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, and she smiled at whatever responses she received. At 9 p.m., she announced she was going to bed early. Merrick helped her with the usual routine wheelchair to bedroom, assistance getting into bed, positioning of pillows. He kissed her forehead and turned off the light. "Good night," she said. "Good night." Merrick waited in the kitchen until he was sure she was asleep, then went to his laptop. The guest bedroom camera showed nothing unusual. Lenora appeared to be sleeping normally. But at 11:47 p.m., his phone buzzed with a motion alert. On the screen, he could see Lenora getting out of bed, not transferring to the wheelchair, not calling for help. Walking. She stood up, stretched, and walked to the guest bedroom. Merrick watched in silence as his wife of 12 years, the woman he'd cared for every day since her accident, the woman who claimed she couldn't feel her legs, who needed help transferring from bed to wheelchair, walked normally across the hallway in the guest bedroom. She opened a laptop computer and began typing. The keyboard sounded her clear through the camera's audio. After 20 minutes, she made a phone call. "Hey, it's me. I know it's late, but I couldn't sleep. Tuesday's all set. He'll be gone from 10 to noon. No, everything's ready. Bank routing numbers, property deed, power of attorney forms. I told you. He trusts me completely. He'll sign anything I put in front of him." Merrick closed his laptop and sat in the dark kitchen. Outside, the rain had stopped, and he could hear an owl calling from somewhere in the pine trees. The sound reminded him of his nights as a forest ranger, sleeping in watchtowers, monitoring radio calls, staying alert for the first sign of smoke or fire. He'd found the fire. Now he needed to decide how to fight it. Merrick woke before dawn and lay in bed listening to Lenora breathe beside him. She slept deeply, the way people sleep when they're not worried about being caught. Her face looked peaceful in the dim light filtering through their bedroom curtains. He slipped out of bed and dressed quietly. In the kitchen, he made coffee and sat at the table with his laptop, reviewing the footage from the night before. Lenora had walked to the guest bedroom 3 more times after the phone call, each trip lasting about 10 minutes. Like at 6 a.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Merrick Cole. The voice was male, young, confident. "Yes. This is Colt Keegan from Mountain Fitness. Your wife signed up for our home therapy program, and we need to confirm some insurance information." Merrick walked to the window and looked out at the trees. "What kind of therapy?" "Physical therapy for spinal injuries. We provide in-home equipment and personal training for disabled clients." "I see. And when does this start?" "We're scheduled for Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock. Will you be there to assist?" "No, I have a doctor's appointment that morning." "Perfect. That's fine. We can work with your wife directly." The call ended. Merrick poured a second cup of coffee and thought about Colt Keegan. Young voice, nervous energy, probably the same age as the male voice in Lenora's voicemails. When Lenora woke up, Merrick was reading in his chair, same as every morning. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep. Coffee's ready. Bring it here, would you? My back's killing me this morning." Merrick brought her coffee and helped her transfer to the wheelchair. She winced during the movement, favoring her left side. "Maybe you should increase your physical therapy," he said. "I've been thinking the same thing. Actually, I found a company that does home visits. More convenient than driving to town twice a week." "What's the name of the company?" Mountain Fitness. They specialize in spinal injuries. After breakfast, Merrick drove to the bank in Bozeman. He'd been putting this off for months, but today felt like the right time to handle their finances. I'd like to separate our joint accounts, he told the bank manager, a woman named Patricia who'd handled his family's business for years. Of course. Any particular reason? Financial planning. My wife is disabled, and we want to protect her assets in case something happens to me. Patricia nodded. Smart thinking. How would you like to structure it? Individual checking accounts for both of us. Keep the joint savings for household expenses. Transfer the investment accounts to my name only. I'll need both signatures for the investment transfer. My wife can't travel easily. Can you prepare the paperwork for me to take home? Within an hour, Merrick had restructured their banking. Lenora would still have access to the household account, but the larger assets, his forced service pension, his father's investment portfolio, the emergency fund were now under his sole control. His next stop was the county courthouse. The clerk helped him pull the property deed for his father's land. As he'd hoped, the original will included a specific clause about inherited property. If the primary heir was deemed mentally incompetent or if there was evidence of fraud, control would pass to the nearest blood relative, Rachel, his estranged sister who'd become a paralegal after their parents died. Merrick drove home and found Lenora in the guest bedroom, door closed. Through the camera feed on his phone, he could see her at the laptop, typing rapidly. She was wearing the clothes she'd slept in, but her hair was brushed and she'd put on makeup. At 2 p.m., she emerged and returned to her wheelchair. How was your morning? She asked when he entered the living room. Quiet. Ran some errands in town. Anything interesting? Just the usual. Bank stuff, post office. That evening, after Lenora went to bed, Merrick sat in his truck in the driveway and dialed Rachel's number. She answered on the third ring. Well, look who decided to call. Hello, Rachel. It's been, 3 years? Let me guess you need something. Merrick listened to the familiar edge in his sister's voice. Rachel had always been sharp, suspicious, quick to assume the worst about people's motives. I need legal help, he said. With what? Property fraud. Document forgery. Maybe more. A long pause. Are you in trouble? Not me. Someone else. Who? Lenora. Another pause. Your wife is committing fraud. I think so. I need someone who understands the law to help me figure out what's really happening. Merrick, what kind of fraud are we talking about? Disability fraud. Financial manipulation. Possibly identity theft. Jesus Christ. How long has this been going on? I'm not sure. Maybe years. Rachel was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, less hostile, more focused. Where are you right now? In my truck outside the house. Can she hear you? No. Okay. Here's what you're going to do. Don't confront her. Don't let her know you suspect anything. Document everything, every conversation, every phone call, every financial transaction. Can you do that? I'm already doing it. Good. How much documentation do you have? Video surveillance, audio recordings, bank records, property deeds. Shit, Merrick. You don't mess around, do you? I learned a few things working for the Forest Service. All right. I'm driving up there tomorrow. Don't do anything stupid until I arrive. Rachel, what? Why are you helping me? Because despite everything that happened with Mom and Dad, you're still my brother. And because if someone's trying to steal your land, they're trying to steal from our family. The call ended. Merrick sat in the truck for another hour, watching the house through the darkness. Light glowed from the guest bedroom window. On his phone, he could see Lenora at the laptop again, typing, occasionally laughing at something on the screen. She looked happy. Happier than he'd seen her in years. Rachel arrived the next morning, driving a silver pickup truck with Montana plates. She parked behind Merrick's vehicle and sat for a moment, studying the house through her windshield. Merrick met her in the driveway. His sister looked older than her 39 years, gray streaks in her dark hair, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there during their parents' illness. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt, work boots caked with dried mud. Place looks the same, she said. Most things do. How's Lenora? You'll see. They walked to the house together. Lenora was in her wheelchair by the window, watching their approach. Rachel, she said when they entered. What a surprise. Hello, Lenora. You look well. Thank you. I wish I felt better, but we make do. Rachel glanced around the living room, taking in the wheelchair-accessible modifications, the medical equipment, the careful arrangement of furniture to accommodate Lenora's supposed disability. Merrick tells me you've been having a hard time. Some days are better than others. But I'm lucky to have such a devoted husband. Yes, Rachel said. You are. Merrick made lunch while his sister and wife talked about inconsequential things: the weather, mutual acquaintances, changes in the town since Rachel's last visit. He watched them through the kitchen camera, studying Rachel's expressions as she observed Lenora. After lunch, Rachel announced she was tired from the drive and asked to rest in the guest bedroom. Of course, Lenora said. Make yourself at home. An hour later, Rachel joined Merrick on the back porch. They sat in wooden chairs his father had built 20 years earlier, looking out at the pine forest that stretched to the horizon. She's good, Rachel said. What do you mean? The performance. The victim act. If I didn't know what you suspected, I'd believe every word. But there are tells. Little things that don't add up. Like what? The way she transfers from wheelchair to couch. Most paraplegics develop specific techniques, muscle memory. She's too careful, too deliberate, like she's thinking about each movement instead of relying on practiced motion. Rachel pulled a notebook from her jacket pocket. I did some research before driving up here. Lenora's medical records, insurance claims, the incident report from her supposed accident. And the accident happened at Morrison's grocery, right? Slip and fall on ice. That's what she said. There was no ice that day. Temperature was 42 degrees, sunny, no precipitation in the previous week. Merrick felt something cold settle in his stomach. How do you know that? Weather Service records. I also talked to Jim Morrison. He remembers the incident because it was unusual. Middle-aged woman falls in his parking lot, claims severe injury, but refuses to let him call an ambulance. She said she didn't want to make a fuss. Merrick, people with spinal injuries don't refuse medical attention. They're terrified of making the damage worse. Rachel flipped through her notebook. I also looked into her medical treatment. Dr. Patterson has been prescribing pain medication and muscle relaxants, but there's no record of MRI scans, no specialist consultations, no surgical recommendations. She said the doctors wanted to avoid surgery unless absolutely necessary. That's bullshit. Spinal injuries require extensive diagnostic testing. The fact that she's been treated with basic pain management for 4 years suggests either medical malpractice or fraud. They sat in silence, watching clouds move across the sky. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermal currents, patient and predatory. There's more, Rachel said. I ran a background check on your wife. What did you find? 3 years ago, she applied for a business license in Missoula. Consulting services. The application was never completed, but it shows she was planning some kind of independent income. She never mentioned starting a business. Around the same time, she opened a personal checking account at First National Bank. Not the one where you do your family banking. This account has regular deposits from an unknown source. Merrick turned to look at his sister. How much money? $2,000 a month. Every month for 3 years. Where's it coming from? I'm still working on that. But I have some ideas. That evening, Merrick cooked dinner for 3. Rachel helped in the kitchen while Lenora watched television from her wheelchair. She's been getting phone calls, Merrick said quietly. Someone she calls babe. They're planning to transfer ownership of the house. When? Tomorrow morning. While I'm supposed to be at a doctor's appointment. Supposed to be. She rescheduled it without telling me. Rachel nodded. We need to be ready. You have recording equipment. Everything's already set up. Good. Tomorrow morning, you're going to leave for your appointment as planned. But you're going to park down the road and monitor everything through your cameras. What about you? I'll be in town talking to some people. If this goes the way I think it will, we're going to need witnesses. After dinner, Rachel excused herself to make phone calls. Merrick helped Lenora get ready for bed, following their usual routine. She seemed relaxed, almost cheerful. It's nice having Rachel here, she said as he adjusted her pillows. She seems different than before. People change. Grief affects everyone differently. Is that what happened between you two? Grief. Merrick paused in arranging the blankets. Among other things, maybe it's time to let go of old grudges. Life's too short to stay angry at family. Maybe. I love you, Merrick. I hope you know that. He looked down at his wife, her face soft in the bedside lamp's glow. For a moment, he almost forgot about the cameras, the recordings, the betrayal he'd discovered. For a moment, she was just Lenora, the woman he'd married 12 years ago, the woman he'd promised to love in sickness and in health. I love you too, he said at midnight, the motion sensors activated. Merrick watched from the kitchen as Lenora got out of bed and walked to the guest bedroom. This time, she was carrying a manila folder and her cell phone. The call she made was longer than the others. Everything's ready for tomorrow. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He kissed me goodnight, like always. The papers are all here. Property deed transfer, power of attorney, financial statements. I know, baby. After tomorrow, we'll have everything. No more pretending. No more acting helpless. Just you and me and all his money. The call ended at 12:47 a.m. Lenora returned to bed, walking normally, no trace of the woman who couldn't feel her legs. Merrick saved the audio file and went to bed. He lay awake until dawn, listening to his wife sleep beside him, planning for the day ahead. Merrick left for his doctor's appointment at 9:30 a.m., exactly as he would on any normal Tuesday. He kissed Lenora goodbye, made sure she had everything she needed, and drove away in his truck. 2 miles down the road, he pulled into an abandoned logging access and parked behind a stand of pine trees. His phone showed clear feeds from all 4 cameras. Lenora was still in her wheelchair, watching morning television. At T9:45, she answered the door. The man who entered was exactly what Merrick had expected: mid-30s, athletic build, the kind of confidence that came from youth and physical fitness. Colt Keegan from Mountain Fitness. Right on time, Lenora said as she closed the door behind him. Is he gone? Doctor's appointment. Won't be back until noon. Colt set a gym bag on the coffee table and looked around the living room. Nice place. Worth a lot of money. 40 acres of prime Montana land. Plus the house, the outbuildings, his pension, investment accounts. We're talking about $2 million, maybe more. And he'll just sign it over? Lenora laughed. Honey, I've been setting this up for 4 years. The man worships me. He thinks I'm a helpless invalid who depends on him for everything. What about his sister? Rachel? She hates me. Always has. But she's not a threat. Merrick cut her out of his life years ago. Colt opened his gym bag and pulled out a folder of papers. Power of attorney forms, property transfer documents, bank routing authorizations. Everything we discussed. Perfect. Help me up. Merrick watched through his phone screen as his wife stood up from the wheelchair and stretched. She moved normally, no trace of disability, no hint of pain or limitation. God, it feels good to move around when he's not here, she said. Do you know how hard it is to act helpless all the time? Why didn't you just divorce him? Are you kidding? Divorce means splitting assets 50-50, maybe less. This way, I get everything. The poor devoted husband loses his mind, maybe threatens suicide, signs over everything to make sure his beloved wife is taken care of after he's gone. You think he'll actually kill himself? I don't care what he does, as long as he signs the papers first. They sat at the kitchen table, spreading documents across the surface. Merrick recognized some of the forms he'd seen similar paperwork when his parents were dying and needed to transfer property to avoid estate taxes. Here's how it works, Lenora explained. When he gets home, I'll be crying, upset about medical bills and our financial situation. He'll want to comfort me, fix the problem. I'll show him these papers and tell him the lawyer says this is the only way to protect our assets if something happens to one of us. And he'll sign. He'll sign. The man hasn't made a decision without asking my opinion in 4 years. He's completely dependent on me emotionally. Colt leaned back in his chair. What happens after he signs? You disappear for a few days. I wait for the property transfer to clear. Then I have a miraculous recovery. Turns out the doctors were wrong about my paralysis. It was just severe trauma that's finally healing. And Merrick gets to choose. He can accept that his wife recovered and lied to him about a few things. Or he can make a fuss and discover that he's legally signed away everything he owns. Either way, you win. Either way, I win. At 10:30, they moved to the bedroom. Merrick's camera angle couldn't capture everything, but the audio was clear enough. Lenora and Colt were having sex in the bed Merrick shared with his wife, on the sheets he'd washed last week, while discussing the final details of stealing everything he owned. When they finished, Lenora made coffee and they returned to the kitchen table. "I still don't understand why you stayed with him so long," Colt said. "The setup took time. 4 years ago, I was just another unhappy wife married to a boring forest ranger. No money, no assets worth stealing. But when he inherited his parents' land and started taking care of me full-time, everything changed." "Change how?" "He became completely devoted. Gave up his job, his friends, his hobbies. Made me the center of his universe. A man like that will do anything to protect the person he loves, including signing away everything he owns. What if he hadn't been so devoted? Then I would have divorced him and taken half. But this way is so much better. I get everything, and he gets to feel like a hero right up until the end." At 11:15, Colt packed up his papers and prepared to leave. "Call me when it's done," he said, kissing Lenora goodbye. "I will. By tonight, we'll be rich." After Colt left, Lenora returned to her wheelchair and positioned herself on the couch. She turned on the television, arranged magazines on her lap table, and assumed the pose Merrick would expect to find when he returned home. At 11:45, she called his cell phone. "Hi, honey. How's the appointment going?" "That's good. Listen, I got some disturbing news from the insurance company while you were gone. I don't want to worry you, but we need to talk when you get home. It's about our financial situation." "No, nothing urgent, just some paperwork we need to handle. See you soon." Merrick saved the call recording and started his truck. Time to go home and see what his devoted wife had planned for him. He parked in the driveway at exactly noon and entered the house carrying the pharmacy bag that proved he'd been to his appointment. "How did it go?" Lenora asked from the couch. "Fine. Blood pressure's good, cholesterol's down. Dr. Patterson wants to see me again in 6 months." "That's wonderful." Merrick kissed her forehead and sat in his usual chair. "You said you got some news from the insurance company?" Lenora's expression became worried, vulnerable. "I hate to burden you with this, but they're questioning my disability claim. They want more documentation, more proof that I'm really as disabled as I claim." "What kind of proof?" "Medical records, financial statements, proof that you've given up income to care for me full-time." "We have all that." "I know, but there's more. The insurance company says if they can't verify my disability, they might demand repayment of the benefits I've received over the past 4 years. Merrick leaned forward. "How much money are we talking about?" $60,000. "Maybe more." "Jesus. I spoke to a lawyer this morning. He says there's a way to protect our assets in case the insurance company comes after us." "What kind of protection?" Lenora reached for a folder on her lap table. "Legal documents that transfer ownership of the house and other assets to me. That way, if they sue you for the money, they can't take everything we own." Merrick took the folder and opened it. The papers looked official, complex, filled with legal language he didn't understand. "This seems like a lot of paperwork for asset protection," he said. "The lawyer says it has to be thorough to hold up in court." Merrick studied his wife's face. She looked worried, helpless, completely dependent on his decision. The same expression she'd worn for 4 years whenever they faced any kind of problem. "What happens if I don't sign?" "Then we lose everything. The house, the land, your parents' legacy, everything your family worked for. And if I do sign, then our assets are protected. We'll still live here, still be married, still have the same life. The only difference is that legally, I'll own the property instead of you." Merrick nodded slowly. "When do you need an answer?" "The lawyer is coming by this afternoon. If we're going to do this, it has to be today. This afternoon. I know it's sudden, but the insurance company deadline is tomorrow. We don't have time to think it over." Merrick set the folder on the coffee table and looked at his wife. She met his eyes with the same trusting expression she'd worn since her accident, the same vulnerable need that had made him restructure his entire life around her care. "Okay," he said. "If you think it's the right thing to do, I'll sign." Relief flooded her face. "Really? Really? You've been through enough. If this protects you from more problems, then it's worth it." "Oh, Merrick, I love you so much." "I love you too." That afternoon, a lawyer named Davidson arrived with more paperwork. He was younger than Merrick expected, nervous, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. They sat at the kitchen table while Davidson explained each document. This transfers primary ownership of the property to your wife, with you maintaining residual rights as long as you remain married. What does that mean exactly? It means that if something happens to the marriage, your wife retains ownership of the property. Merrick signed his name on 17 different documents: bank transfers, property deeds, investment account authorizations, power of attorney forms. With each signature, he watched Lenora's face. She looked relieved, grateful, completely convinced that her devoted husband was saving them both. When the lawyer left, Lenora was almost giddy with happiness. "I can't believe it's over," she said. "I was so worried about losing everything." "We're safe now," Merrick said. "That's what matters." That evening, Lenora was more affectionate than she'd been in months. She held his hand while they watched television, thanked him repeatedly for protecting her, told him how lucky she was to have such a devoted husband. At tea bedtime, she kissed him with genuine warmth. "I know this was hard for you," she said, "signing away the land your father left you. But you did it to protect me, and I'll never forget that." "I'd do anything for you," Merrick said. "You know that." After she fell asleep, he went to the kitchen and opened his laptop. The day's footage showed everything Colt's arrival, their conversation, their intimacy, their planning. Hours of evidence documenting fraud, adultery, and conspiracy. But the most important footage was from the afternoon. While Lenora thought she was convincing her devoted husband to sign away everything he owned, Merrick had been documenting her deception with crystal clarity. Every document he'd signed had been altered with Rachel's help. Instead of transferring ownership to Lenora, the papers transferred everything to the family trust his father had established with Rachel as the backup trustee. Instead of losing his assets, Merrick had legally protected them from anyone trying to steal them through fraud or deception. Instead of signing away his future, he'd signed Lenora's confession. Merrick woke early Wednesday morning and made coffee as always. Lenora was still sleeping, her face peaceful and satisfied. She'd gotten everything she wanted, or so she believed. At 7 a.m., his phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Everything's ready. You sure you want to do this?" He replied, "Yes." At 8 a.m., while Lenora was having breakfast, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Merrick said. Two people stood on his porch, a woman in a business suit carrying a briefcase, and a man in a sheriff's department uniform. Behind them, Rachel's truck was parked in the driveway. "Lenora Cole?" the woman asked. "She's inside." Merrick led them to the living room where Lenora sat in her wheelchair, coffee mug halfway to her lips. When she saw the sheriff, her face went pale. "Mrs. Cole, I'm Agent Martinez with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. This is Deputy Wilson from the County Sheriff's Office. We have some questions about your disability insurance claims and recent property transfers." The coffee mug slipped from Lenora's hands and shattered on the floor. "I don't understand," she said. "We have evidence suggesting you've been defrauding the federal disability insurance program for approximately 4 years. We also have evidence of attempted financial fraud involving property transfers and forged documents." Agent Martinez opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "We have video surveillance showing you walking normally on multiple occasions, audio recordings of conversations discussing your fraudulent activities, and financial records showing regular payments from an undisclosed source." Lenora looked at Merrick. Her expression was confused, frightened, completely at odds with the confident woman he'd seen on camera yesterday morning. "Merrick, tell them this is ridiculous. You know I can't walk. You've been taking care of me for 4 years." Merrick sat in his usual chair and looked at his wife. "I know what you are." "What?" "I know you can walk. I know about Colt. I know about the money you've been hiding. I know about the plan to steal everything I own." Agent Martinez pulled out a laptop computer. "Mrs. Cole, I'm going to show you some video footage. This was taken yesterday morning while your husband was at his doctor's appointment." On the screen, Lenora stood up from her wheelchair and stretched. The image was crystal clear, the audio perfect. "God, it feels good to move around when he's not here," her recorded voice said. "Do you know how hard it is to act helpless all the time?" Lenora stared at the screen in shock. Where did this come from? Your husband has been documenting your activities for the past week, Agent Martinez said. Motion-activated cameras, audio recordings, financial surveillance. Very thorough work. Merrick, Lenora's voice was small, confused. You were spying on me? I was protecting myself. Agent Martinez continued playing footage. Lenora and Colt discussing the property transfers, planning to steal Merrick's assets, having sex in the marital bedroom. Hours of evidence showing conspiracy, fraud, and adultery. This is impossible, Lenora whispered. He couldn't have known. Mrs. Cole, you also need to know that the property transfer documents you convinced your husband to sign yesterday were legally invalid. The papers were altered to protect his assets, not transfer them to you. What? Deputy Wilson pulled out handcuffs. Lenora Cole, you're under arrest for federal disability fraud, attempted identity theft, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. As the deputy read her rights, Lenora looked desperately around the room. Her eyes found Merrick, still sitting calmly in his chair. Please, she said, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Merrick didn't respond. I love you, she said as the deputy guided her toward the door. Everything I did because I love you. No, Merrick said quietly. You did it because you thought I was stupid. After they took Lenora away, Agent Martinez stayed to review additional evidence. Rachel arrived an hour later with boxes of financial records, medical documents, and legal papers. How long will the investigation take? Merrick asked. With this much evidence? Not long. She's looking at federal fraud charges, which carries serious prison time. What about Colt Keegan? He's already in custody. Turned himself in this morning and agreed to testify against her in exchange for reduced charges. Rachel sat on the couch where Lenora had spent 4 years pretending to be disabled. Smart of him. The conspiracy charges alone could get him 10 years. Agent Martinez packed up her laptop. Mr. Cole, I have to ask, how long have you suspected your wife was defrauding the system? 1 week. And in 1 week, you gathered enough evidence to build a federal case. I spent 15 years as a forest ranger. When you're fighting fires, you learn to work fast and be thorough. Well, your thoroughness just saved the taxpayers about $200,000 in fraudulent disability payments. After Agent Martinez left, Merrick and Rachel sat in the quiet house. The wheelchair was still by the window where Lenora had left it. Her coffee mug was still broken on the floor. How do you feel? Rachel asked. Empty. Angry. Not anymore. Sad. Merrick considered the question. I feel like I've been living with a stranger for 4 years. The woman I married died in that parking lot, and I've been caring for someone who never existed. What will you do now? Clean up. Move on. Try to remember what my life was like before all this started. Rachel stood up and walked to the window. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Did I? She was stealing from you, from the government, from everyone who pays into the disability system. She was going to take everything Dad left you and run off with her boyfriend. I know, but I still promised to love her in sickness and in health. I broke that promise. Merrick, she was never sick. The promise was based on a lie. I know that too. They spent the afternoon going through Lenora's belongings. In the guest bedroom, they found the laptop she'd been using, financial records, correspondence with Colt, and a detailed plan for transferring Merrick's assets. Jesus, Rachel said, reading through the documents. She had this plan down to the day. Bank transfers, property sales, even a timeline for when she'd fake her recovery. What was the timeline? 6 months after getting control of your assets. She was going to announce that her paralysis was improving. Full recovery within a year. And then, divorce. She calculated that by the time you figured out what happened, she and Colt would be living in Costa Rica with $2 million of your money. Merrick sat on the bed where he'd found his wife walking normally less than a week ago. The mattress still smelled like her perfume. I keep thinking about yesterday morning, he said. What about it? When she kissed me goodbye and told me she loved me. For a second, I almost believed her. That's what made her dangerous. She was good at the performance. Too good. That evening, Joni Price knocked on the door. She'd heard about Lenora's arrest from someone in town and wanted to check on Merrick. I can't believe it, she said, sitting at the kitchen table where Lenora had planned her fraud, just yesterday. She seems so helpless, so dependent on you. That was the idea. But how could she fake being paralyzed? I've seen her in that wheelchair hundreds of times. She was only disabled when people were watching. Joni shook her head. All those times I brought food, sat with her, felt sorry for her situation. She was lying the whole time. The whole time. And you? How are you handling all this? Merrick poured coffee for both of them. I'm not sure yet. It's hard to know what's real anymore. The care you gave her was real. The sacrifice you made was real. The love you felt was real, even if hers wasn't. Was it love, though? Or was it just duty? Does it matter? I think it does. Joni reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You're a good man, Merrick Cole. Don't let her actions change how you see yourself. After Joni left, Merrick walked through the house alone. Every room contained reminders of the past 4 years' medical equipment, accessibility modifications, the careful arrangements he'd made to accommodate Lenora's supposed disability in their bedroom. He packed her clothes into boxes. In the bathroom, he removed her medications, expensive prescriptions for conditions she'd never had. In the living room, he folded up the wheelchair and leaned it against the wall. Tomorrow, he would donate everything to people who actually needed it. 6 months later, Merrick sat in the federal courthouse in Helena, watching his wife face sentencing. Lenora wore an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. She looked smaller than he remembered, older, diminished by the weight of her crimes. The prosecutor, a stern woman named Collins, presented the government's case methodically. 4 years of disability fraud totaling $847,000 in false claims. Attempted theft of property worth $2.1 million. Document forgery, identity theft, conspiracy, and perjury. Your Honor, the defendant's crimes were not impulsive mistakes, but a calculated, long-term deception that victimized not only her husband, but every taxpayer who contributes to the federal disability insurance program. Lenora's court-appointed attorney argued for leniency, claiming his client suffered from mental health issues brought on by financial stress. My client made serious errors in judgment, but she's not a hardened criminal. She's a middle-aged woman who panicked about her financial security and made desperate choices. Judge Morrison was not impressed. Counselor, your client spent 4 years pretending to be paralyzed while planning to steal over $2 million from her devoted husband. This wasn't desperation, it was premeditation of the highest order. When called to testify, Colt Keegan admitted his role in the conspiracy, but claimed he thought Lenora was actually disabled when their relationship began. I believed her story about the accident and her husband's devotion. She seemed genuinely helpless, genuinely grateful for my attention. I didn't realize she was faking anything until she started talking about property transfers and financial planning. And at that point, Mr. Keegan, what did you do? I went along with it. I knew it was wrong, but I was in love with her. I thought we could build a life together. Using stolen money. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Morrison sentenced Colt to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of probation and full restitution of his share of the conspiracy. When it was Lenora's turn to speak, she stood with help from her attorney and faced the judge. Your Honor, I know I made terrible mistakes. I hurt people who trusted me, and I violated the law. I take full responsibility for my actions. She paused and looked directly at Merrick for the first time since the trial began. I want to apologize to my husband, who gave up everything to care for me. He deserved better than my lies and betrayal. I also want to apologize to everyone who depends on disability insurance for their survival. My actions were wrong, and they damaged a system that helps people who genuinely need assistance. Judge Morrison listened without expression. When Lenora finished, he reviewed his notes and delivered the sentence. Mrs. Cole, you have pled guilty to multiple federal charges involving fraud, theft, and conspiracy. These crimes were sophisticated, long-term, and devastating to the victims. You exploited your husband's love and devotion while stealing from taxpayers who fund programs designed to help legitimately disabled Americans. The court sentences you to 7 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution of all fraudulent disability payments, plus damages to your husband in the amount of $500,000. The gavel fell. Lenora was led away in handcuffs, and Merrick watched her disappear through the courtroom doors. Outside the courthouse, Rachel waited by her truck. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Justice was served." "That's not what I asked." Merrick looked up at the Montana sky, clear and endless above the city buildings. "I feel free." "Free from what?" "From pretending that any of it was real." They drove back to Bozeman in separate vehicles. Merrick had decisions to make about the house, the property, his future. The past 4 years felt like a strange dream, now a period of suspended animation where his real life had been put on hold while he cared for someone who never existed. That evening, he sat on the back porch with a beer and his laptop, reading through emails that had accumulated during the trial. Former colleagues from the Forest Service checking in, old friends offering support, job opportunities from agencies looking for experienced rangers. At 9 p.m., his phone chimed with a new email. The sender was Lenora, writing from federal prison. "Dear Merrick," the message began. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this. I've had 6 months to think about what I did, and I want you to know how sorry I am." Merrick deleted the email without reading the rest. 5 minutes later, another email arrived. He deleted it without opening it. Then another. Delete. Another. Delete. At 9:30, he blocked her email address and emptied his trash folder. The messages disappeared permanently, and he felt no regret. 1 year after Lenora's sentencing, Merrick stood on a mountain trail outside Glacier National Park, leading a group of hikers through the wilderness he'd once called home. The tourists were from back east, lawyers, doctors, accountants who'd never seen country like this. "The key to reading weather in the mountains," he explained, "is understanding that everything changes fast. What looks like a clear day can become dangerous in an hour if you don't know the signs." A woman in expensive hiking gear raised her hand. "What kind of signs?" "Wind patterns, cloud formations, how the animals behave. The mountain tells you everything you need to know if you pay attention." They hiked for 3 more hours, reaching a viewpoint that offered sweeping views of the valley below. The tourists took pictures and ate lunch while Merrick sat apart, studying the landscape with practiced eyes. His guide business had grown quickly. Word spread among adventure travelers that Merrick Cole knew the wilderness better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. He led hiking expeditions, photography tours, and survival courses for corporate executives who wanted to test themselves against nature. More importantly, he'd started working with men who'd been victimized by fraudulent spouses. Through Rachel's paralegal contacts, Merrick had connected with lawyers who specialized in financial abuse cases. He provided consulting services teaching husbands how to document suspicious activities, gather evidence legally, and protect their assets from predatory partners. "It's more common than people think," Rachel had told him. "Financial abuse, disability fraud, long-term deception. You developed expertise that could help a lot of people." The work felt meaningful in a way that caring for Lenora never had. These men were genuinely in need, genuinely grateful for guidance that could save them from losing everything they'd worked to build. After the tourists returned to their hotel, Merrick drove back to his new cabin, a smaller place he'd built on the far edge of his father's property. The old house held too many memories of deception and betrayal. This new home was simple, functional, designed for a man living alone at a sunset. He sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey and watched the light fade from the sky. The silence was complete except for wind in the pine trees and the distant call of a loon from the lake below. His phone buzzed with a text message from one of his clients, a software engineer in Seattle whose wife had been forging his signature on loan applications. Photos from the bank's security camera came through. "She's been taking money for 6 months. Can't thank you enough for teaching me how to document everything." Merrick replied, "Stay calm. Follow the plan we discussed. Let the evidence speak for itself." At 10 p.m., another email arrived from the federal prison system. Lenora again. Try to reach him through a different address. The subject line read, "Please read this. I'm sorry." Merrick deleted the message and blocked the new address. He learned to recognize her various attempts to contact him, letters forwarded through friends, messages sent from other inmates' accounts. Even a phone call routed through her sister, he'd ignored them all. Forgiveness required trust, and trust required honesty. Lenora had proven herself incapable of honesty, so forgiveness was impossible. Some people deserved second chances. Others deserved exactly what they GOT'd. Team Midnight. Merrick turned off his phone and went to bed. Tomorrow he was leading a 3-day expedition into the Beartooth Mountains with a group of photographers for National Geographic. Real work, honest work, the kind that left him tired and satisfied at the end of each day. The past was finished. The future belonged to him alone. As he fell asleep, Merrick thought about the forest fires he'd fought as a ranger, how they consumed everything in their path, but left the soil clean and fertile for new growth. Destruction followed by renewal. Death followed by life. Sometimes a fire was exactly what the forest needed.